Greetings, one and all. 'Tis me, G minus. You can call me Mark or G or SOB. And today we're going to talk about something very dear to my heart. Again, Kicks magazine. I was trying to put some thought into how to do this without making it a 5-hour video. And Kicks magazine was a fanzine by Billy Miller and Miriam Linner. Later, I always do this. I pause them because Billy Miller, it's a tongue twist. It's a tongue twister to me always. Billy Miller, Miriam Linner, latter Miriam Miller. I'm so sorry, Miriam. It's always been a tongue twister to me. I always wind up and say Billy and Millie Lyrium or something. Anyway, they are probably best known to some of you for the Norton Records label, one of the greatest record labels ever. And I cannot cover Norton Records and Kicks magazine. And really what I want to do is talk about my journey on Kicks magazine, because it was an absolute game changer to me and many of my friends. So let's do that. Let's dig into these. So there is another issue coming, I am told by Miriam. There were 7 issues though, and for the sake of relevance to what we're doing, I am going to completely disregard volumes 1 and 2. And the reason is I want to talk about my history with Kicks magazine and my love for it. And I bought it when issue 3 came out in 1984, and I could not find prior issues. I probably found this one at least 10 years later, and this one in 2013 I just saw on the back. That would have been when they reprinted it. I would have bought it then. So although these are great, it would be pointless me sharing any information about them because these were bought at a later date. So sorry, they're going on the floor. Now, this is the most significant magazine I ever bought in my entire life, outside of the first issue of New Commotion I was given. But this was the thing that absolutely blew my brain apart, changed the way I feel about music to this day, opened up my mind, blew off some of the cobwebs and snobbery and the way that you can be boxed in, lazized. And it really, to this day, it still affects what I listen to. Now, I was not aware of Kicks magazine, but myself and my friend Mark Lamar used to regularly go up to London because we both lived south of there. And it would be an occasion we would take up records to trade with Terry at Spinning Disc, and we would visit various other places, Rock On in Kentish Town, Vintage Records, Caledonian Road, I forget what else was there. And the last place we would go to would be Moondogs, when Barney was running it. And it might have been the first time I went there when Barney was there, and after Paul Sanford. And I remember we got there, we'd been shopping, we'd just come from Vintage Records in Caledonian Road, and I was excited because I'd just bought an original copy of Playmates by Daryl Feltz for £30. And I seem to remember Barney briefly excused himself after we did that. We bought a few things and he left to go and check out the sale they were having at Vintage Records. They were closing, actually. Anyway, I digress. He was selling this, and I believe, my memory is faint on this, but I believe Mark had said, "Oh, you've got to get Kicks magazine. I've seen this magazine from America and it's unbelievable." He might have already had it, or he'd seen a copy, I can't remember. But they had it and I bought it, and I mean, as soon as I saw it, I mean, I was like, what? This is, there's no way I'm not buying this. You've got Escarita on the cover, The Phantom and Link Ray, Beach Boys, I kind of went, huh? Collins Kids, 60s bands, surf tunes, loads more. 60s bands and surf tunes were not my jam back then at all, I would tell you that. I had a picture of the Phantom on the back. I mean, it was $3. They were probably selling it £4 or £5, I don't know. So I got it. And look at the condition of it. I bought this brand new, probably in the 90s. I had to laminate it. It's covered in coffee stains. It's worn. It's torn. I've had other copies of this that, I've picked up used, but I've never wanted to replace it because, as far as I'm concerned, there is no greater compliment to anything that you create, be it a record, be it a CD, be it a magazine, to someone to own it and to abuse it like this. It means they loved it, and boy did I love this. There are things hidden in here that I'm sure there are still people who collect this music are not aware of. Now, my first impressions when I got it was, firstly, I was amazed how much stuff is in here. There is so much reading. And one of the first things was the Escarita album, which was great because I was totally into Escarita at the time, and I was going through a little Richard phase. I think I was going through one of those wild black rockers, they call it. But then when I'd get to things like the Motions, I'm like, oh, what's this 60s crap? Why are they putting that? And then the Beach Boys. I mean, I don't think I even read it was about the early instrumental records. I just went, Beach Boys. Oh my God. I mean, that was not my thing. That was almost the time when I was still separating mods from rockers attitude. But then, I see the Collins kids. I'm like, okay, well, these people have really diverse taste. But then there's a column called Yesterday's Numbers, written by Billy Miller, who has passed away, by the way. I'm sure if anyone is interested in Norton Records or Kicks Magazine, you know that, but rest in peace. Billy, I don't mean to just stop mid-sentence, but Billy Miller he was one of the patron saints of everything cool, him and Howie Pyro. And I have never, ever in my life heard a bad word ever said against the man. He was an absolute saint. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. If ever I do a Norton one with Miriam's permission, I might do something like that. But we had Yesterday's Numbers, and this was a seriously interesting column to me, because basically Billy was just writing reviews of rare records from his collection or things he'd found, and things I recognized, like Buddy Phillips' Coffee Baby was something I knew from a White Label album. So to see that immediately, I'm like, okay, these guys are on the level that I was a big-headed 19-year-old. These people are on my level, and I look at it still, and this killer records that people are still talking about that they were raving about all of those years ago. So going through it, you've got other things that exposed me to, like all of these things like exploitation movies and things. This was the first time this made me reconsider Link Ray. I'd only really listened to like Rumble. I didn't have a lot of thoughts on it. And then, what rockabilly kid doesn't lose his mind when you get this kind of size article on the Phantom? And now look, Benny Joy. Well, you know my thoughts on Benny Joy. Now this magazine I have read cover to cover to cover endlessly. I'm sure there are some things I skipped, but what I didn't skip was the interview with Jess Hooper, where he says plainly that Billy Lee Riley played lead guitar on his Meteor records and names the other Meteor tracks that were not released and were probably disposed of. But there's so much more. There was a lot of personality to this magazine. Like, they would rave about White Castle, and me living in England, I had no idea that they were selling this thing to me, like juicy burgers, what I now know are called sliders. Picture of Billy there in a White Castle. Is that Miriam as well? Oh yeah, Billy and Miriam there. And there was this whole other culture thing, especially when you're living in England, you're reading about, burger joints in New York. And the ironic thing is, I've driven past White Castles. I've not seen them I live in Oregon. I don't know if they're in California. I've not seen them there. But they're more common on the East Coast. I've driven past them in Chicago and New York, but I've never had them. And now I see they have frozen versions in Dairy Mart, but I'm yet to be tempted. I'm not what you'd call a great meat eater. But then they would have things on juvenile delinquent books, which I collected at that time, and I didn't even know other people did. Miriam did a sister magazine, a little fanzine called Bad Seed, directed to, about those. I should have grabbed them off the shelf. If I'd have been more prepared, I would have. And then stuff about the Bobby Fuller Four, who I'd never listened to. I just thought they're a Beatles type of band, you know. But they got me interested. I think by the time I'd finished digesting this, I was curious about 60s music. I wasn't sold. I mean, I liked some 60s music. I liked lots of 60s music, but it wasn't Beatlesy or Stonesy's band. I'd come from the hardcore rockabilly scene where we kind of considered that stuff to be crap or mod music. I don't think that way now, but I did then. But by the time, I'm not going to cover all of these, it will take too long. I'm going to cover the first three probably. The first three that were relevant to me, which were 3, 4, and 5. But by the time that this one came out, there's Hazel again. I think my curiosity was beginning to start to peak about this stuff. And I think I asked Mark, there's more stuff about White Castle. I'm like, what's all this like 60s stuff, like, you know? And I think he'd said, oh, I've been listening to some of, I think that maybe 1 or 2, possibly 3 volumes of Back from the Grave had come out, Tim Warren's legendary compilation. And I think he'd listened to those and had said there was some great stuff on them, and I should check him out. Ronnie Self is one of my biggest idols. Johnny Powers, Ronnie Self, Benny Joy, Bob Luman. But, you know, he sort of said I should check those out. And I found, because my curiosity had, you know, had been kind of awakened with that stuff, and even this kind of Trashmen kind of stuff, which I didn't really listen to, I found an album that had just come out on Big Beat, and it was Texas garage stuff. I think it was maybe the Fort Worth scene. And I bought that out of curiosity. I bought a used copy. It was pretty cheap. And it started off with My Confusion by The Elite. And when I heard that record, I was like, okay, I get it. I absolutely get it. And then when I got the first couple of Back from the Graves, that was it. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh, this stuff is killer. I've never collected garage originals. There's too much stuff to collect. I've got all of the Back from the Graves, and I bought those things like Garage Punk Unknowns, and I love that stuff, but I always chose not to collect the originals. I sell them when I get them. Ralph Nielsen and the Chancellors, that was a record that bridged the gap between garage and rockabilly. But I want to say something about Hazel Adkins as well. I mean, I can't remember at which point it became a magazine and a record label, but I do think from memory that Hazel's House Party was the first Norton release, which was a 33 RPM. I think it was like a 4-track EP. And they'd got Hazel out of retirement. That's how they did these incredible photo pictures of everything. And signed him up, and he recorded for Norton for years. And there are some amazing stories with that. But I don't want to give away Billy and Miriam's stories. I'm sure Miriam, who is still very active, will publish. Well, she has published these things. There is Bad Seed. That was Miriam's little side project for juvenile delinquent books. Great. So that was issue 4, and I'm just going to do a quick issue 5, and maybe say just a very brief thing about the others. You can tell how much I loved issue 5 by the intense amount of coffee. Again, it looks like I had no choice but to laminate it, or whatever you want to call, by hand, not by some professional machine. And once again, it's loved because it's been read and read and read again, referenced, lent. Actually, I don't think I have ever lent these to people. It's the one magazine I would never lend. So what do we have in here without like making it too? More Hazel. This, I think, is this the one? This is probably where it's thumbed through so much. This is the one that has. I took this to the library and Xeroxed so many of these pictures and made a collage, which was up on my wall in the 80s. Yeah, this blew my mind. At this time, I was more than aware of Hazel because one of the first, well, not one of the first, but the first time I went to the Club Shades, which was this club in London, the DJ 50s Flash played Chicken Walk. And I went over to Ray Frencham, who was selling records there, and what's this? And he sold it to me on the Jan label. So I'd been aware of him since 1981. This was 1984, the other one. So, you know, I'd already been a fan for quite a few years. I'd bought all the DJ Jamboree albums and all that kind of stuff. But then to all of a sudden have all of this extra information after being a fan for so long, that's why this looks this way. Stuff on the Rivieras. It will take too much time if I... Oh, look, there's another thing on Bad Seed. Which was a really neat, just little Xeroxed fanzine. What, 15 minutes, okay. Joe Clay interview, probably the first one we saw after he'd been found driving school buses in Louisiana. Again, Dale Hawkins. I've done a thing about Dale Hawkins. I've read that time and time again, over and over. There was something in here that I always kept meaning to query. I think it's in this one. And it is... there was always loads of stuff about Herbie Duncan. They were great friends of Herbie Duncan's. Hayden Thompson. But there was one of these, a great thing on Moon Records and Blue Moon Records. Picture of Alan Page there. With Earl, who was that above him? Was that Earl Peterson? Doesn't matter, does it? These Yesterday's Numbers they would have were my favorites because they would talk about records and you could look from. Oh yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about. I always thought that this was, oh, don't go blank. It's one of your favorite artists, Daniel Clowes. But it says it's M.A. Zingarelli, 1986, so that's where we were in this one. But doesn't that look just like Daniel Clowes' artwork? I'm probably showing my absolute ignorance there. Apologies for that. So what else? Flick through this one. Andy Anderson. That was the only article there was on Carl Cherry, and I Xeroxed that and stuck it to my repro sleeve. It's probably still on there if I've got the repro. There was so many people who wrote for this magazine, though. Nick Tosches wrote for this magazine. Did I knock the camera? Sorry. that must have happened at some point. Nick Tosches did articles for this. So many other people. And I'm just going to say a couple of quick things about the others, or it will go on too long. But number 6 was a landmark. What happened to you, camera? Was a kind of a landmark because that had the most amazing Bobby Fuller story, which became a Bobby Fuller book that Miriam wrote and is still available on Norton Books. You should check out Norton Records. All this stuff is referenced in there for further information. They are still going strong. I've got 2 copies of one of these. Oh yeah, it's that one. I reckon I've replaced this one at some point. I think the other one got wet. I mean, look, Ronnie Dawson. This has got a much glossier cover effect to it. So I'm not going to spend too much longer on these because I feel it'll be a 40-minute video if it's taken me that long to do the first couple. This was a special one for me. Sorry to do the vanity thing. Oh, we should. I'm proud. I got to write for this one. I did some Yesterday's Numbers, which I'm pretty proud of. But I also embarrassed myself with a letter. I read through this. I hadn't read my letter for I don't know how long. You've got to remember I was probably 20 years old. When did this come out? 92. Hold on. Oh no, I was older than that. Oh, I was like 25 or 20. Yeah, I was about 25 or 26. Oh shit. So for some reason I thought it would be cool to write like some kind of Tom Waits kind of hipster or some kind of jive talker. It's kind of embarrassing now. I won't read all of it, but I say things like now listen man, I got a real astrological problem here. This is how it sounds to me. Where did it go? I'm getting my galaxies mixed up. I can't sort out who's who. Firstly, we have the mighty... Oh, stop doing that. Firstly, it's more like a beat. I think I'm more trying to be Kerouacian. Firstly, we have My Little Tattletale, Wig Flippers on Guaranteed, a record which never fails to piss off the neighbours. And then there's the cool Danny and the Galaxies on Darbro, who I'm thinking are the same guys that cut Ad-Lib and Watch Your Step. I have no idea. Why did I care? But then we have Mickey Decker's Boys, ever since the 45 of Popolina and Frankie and Johnny on Galaxy. I guess it to be a 70s pressing, and nearly forgot this rock and roll galaxy. Yowza, what gives? Mark Lee Allen. age 4. So yeah, that's an embarrassing letter. I was obviously trying to be impressive. I I think I've always spent my life trying to impress people. Well, is that what I'm doing now? It doesn't feel like it. I feel like I'm boring people, but a couple of you said keep doing it. So I did. I'm very proud of something in this one, and that's that I got to write some yesterday's numbers. What was it in the other one? Anyway, it's not super important that I show you the pages, but the thing about me writing the yesterday's numbers that I was wanted to find it because it was myself and Barney were the only people that I think we were the only Brits to ever write for Kicks, and that was an honor in itself that I'm still incredibly proud of. Oh man, where is it? But well, I can't find it at the moment. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's in the other one. Maybe I had a letter in one issue and an article in the other. But the thing that really amazes me when I look at it now is I shared reviews with several other people on that page, and they were complete strangers who lived in a country a long way away that I never really thought I would know in real life, and now most of them I know and speak to on a regular basis. I noticed I shared a column with Dick Blackburn, who I message 2 or 3 times a week and speak to often and have met lots of times. Vincent Brzezinwick wrote like a column after me, and I'm like, I know all these people now. It's really weird. So that's all I need to say about Kicks Magazine, because we're already at 21 minutes, and that's why I tried to kind of stumble and mumble through it without saying too much about the bigger picture, which is Norton Records. But that's another story, children. All right, I'm out of here. Oh, but before I do, there's another Kicks. You should check out Kicks Publications and Kicks Books. This is a wonderful one they did with amazing photographs of Eddie Rocco. Okay, later. Oh, yeah, I did actually purposely wear that. And if you don't like it, well, there you go. All right, bye.